What's up guys, my name is Andy. In this video I wanted to go over some of the wiring etiquette and component location with respect to vibrations and other parts, and just kind of cover something that I usually gloss over in my other videos, or and I'm guilty of not doing it the right way on some other of the projects that I've had. But what I'm talking about specifically is as you go through and installing stuff, you know, for example, make sure, here, let's go to a simple one. Make sure you have a good ground. So in something like this rat's nest that I got over here, which kind of goes against what I'm talking about, I've got this setup here where I've got actually two relays sitting behind my starter, or below my starter solenoid. And what you want is a good ground for whatever electronics that need a ground. In this case, I'm using the screw that secures the relay to the fender here, but I'm using the screw because it has to go into this metal as the ground. Instead of connecting it to someplace else that may not be a good place, I'm utilizing the mount for this relay as the ground at the same time. Now, there are always better ways to do things and different ways to do things, but this is just meant to just kind of cover that kind of stuff. And while we're here, you can also look at, see how I've got a lot going on here. And what I should do is I can reduce some of this stuff by turning it into a single relay and running everything off of that. Because what I've got these relays for is for devices that only need power when the car is on. And so I've got two relays here because I had done them at two different times, but really I could redo this and just have one relay. And tucking it underneath the starter solenoid is not a bad idea because you really can't see it, because I am hitting the relay. You almost can't see that because it's black and it's sitting behind these wires. And that would reduce some of the wires that I have here. Another thing you would like to, would be good to do is to start doing stuff like this wire loom, or even if you just wrap stuff with electrical tape just to clean it up, to get this colorful smorgasbord of wires out of your vision, is by covering it. See, I got a little piece of wire loom right here, and then I've got another piece, oh, that's coming off, another piece down here, just to kind of reduce some of the, the brightness of all the colors, but I still need all this stuff in this location. So that's one of the things you can do, is start looking at your wiring and maybe either reducing the wires that you have or covering them with some loom or some electrical tape to kind of clean it up and make it look like, we know what we're doing, which sometimes we don't, but that's part of the game. So as we move around, you've got things like, here we go, this ground wire. This ground wire could, instead of going all the way around over here to the fender and touching there, it could go from here just straight over to here, maybe utilize this fastener from this radiator mount. It doesn't need to be very long, and by shortening that, it does shorten the ground path, which is not a bad thing. This is not a bad ground wire, but this is one of those things, if you want to clean up your engine bay, this is something that you can do to reduce some of the clutter and some of the mess that you have in there. This doesn't look too bad, but that's just an idea. If we go over this way, here off the back of my coil, I've got electronic ignition in here instead of a point system. So these wires, this is something that I should have taken care of, is adding a wire loom or covering these wires up so that they just didn't look like they were just hanging out and doing their own thing. Again, this is not hurting the performance or the effectiveness of this part, but I think it would clean it up if I were to cover those wires with something like loom. And as you move around over this way, again, you can see I've got this tack wire. This actually goes to the tachometer in my car. And while it is in the wire loom here and goes back through the firewall, I've got this extra piece. What I probably should do is actually shorten this wire. I bet I can make it like that long, and then I'll get rid of this excess piece here, and then I could cover that up with some electrical tape and just clean it up, make it look nice. As you move along back here, again, you can see I've got some more, well, here's some of the wiring that's covered in the wire loom. Just to clean it up, just to make something look like we're trying. This is a factory harness, so I'm gonna pretty much leave that alone. I guess you could cover this little section of wire if you wanted, but that's just something you guys could deal with. And as you're going through your engine bay, just start looking at all the various wires that you have and seeing if maybe you can clean some stuff up. Another thing you can do is get clips like this. Now, this is not a factory clip, but it's designed to hold a group of wires and utilize a hole in the fender. This is not the one that goes with this car, but I did have it in my little parts bin, so I used it. So this wire just wasn't flopping around and just making a bunch of noise. And speaking of flopping around, what it does do is it begins to wear on the paint. And if I had another one that maybe secured the wire here, just keep this thing from flopping around, that'd probably be a good way to do something like that. Speaking of parts moving around, if you go to, if you notice that the engine, you probably already know that as you get on the motor and you're throttling up, the engine's gonna twist and move a little bit relative to the car. And here we've got this is the fuel line coming from the fuel tank in the back of the car. And there's actually, it's kind of broken, but I do still have part of the rubber grommet on here that is in this fender. And I've got it set up so that this metal bar doesn't rub on the fender and wear through it. We don't want to leak, we don't want to create a leak. But because this whole system moves independently from here, I do want to isolate that vibration. Another thing you can look at here in this fuel line that I have, it is a hard line and it's going to move with the motor. However, there are going to be small vibrations and variations in this pipe as you're driving around, and you can't see it, but it's not quite touching this oil sending unit. So I've got a little bit of space in there. However, it is resting on this fuel pump, and that's not ideal. What I should do is maybe I could cut a piece of some rubber fuel line and just wrap it right through here, and that'll give us kind of a rubber isolated location, and then it won't rub on that. What I don't want to do is just rub a hole over time through that fuel line. If you come around here, you'll see that it's not quite touching the timing cover, which is great. It's okay that it's on this vacuum line, because this vacuum line is rubber, so that's not going to hurt anything. As you come around here to the clamp for the radiator hose, it's not touching, so that's good. It's not touching. It is rubbing just a little bit on this heater hose, or this, actually it's just a heater bypass hose, but that's okay. And then underneath the carb, it's almost touching the bottom of this electronic choke, but it's not, so we're good. So as time goes on, this thing, the only place it's really touching is on the fuel pump down here. So maybe just isolating that, and that will help keep us from wearing any holes in this fuel line. So this is just a short video to kind of give you an idea of some things that you can look at when you're isolating your wires, so that they clean up, you got a good ground. You're looking at parts that maybe move, particularly with relative to this fuel line. We don't want to wear a hole in that and get fuel spraying everywhere, and then other wiring going to the firewall, stuff like that. Just something you guys can kind of take a look at and get an idea, maybe how can you clean this up. I obviously have some work to do, and as I work on stuff, I try to address things. This has been a while since I've put this in there, so I'm guilty of this one. But I do try to make an effort to clean stuff up and just kind of make it, separated, isolated wire so I can get to if I need to, but also clean it up so it doesn't look like I just have stuff all over the engine bay. So guys, that takes care of that. I think this is something you guys can do in your engine bay. Go through and start cleaning stuff up and taking a look at what maybe you can thin out or remove or isolate. It's a good way to go. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. And if you subscribe, I appreciate it because it helps my channel out. And we'll see you in the next one.